Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are having a good time and enjoying the conference already. It's a great pleasure to be here and to tell you about our story. Nothing necessarily groundbreaking here, but I think that we've been through a lot of iterations and a lot of experimentations in the past 3 years now that have taught us a lot, and we made tons of mistakes, and also I think a great amount of great things. And I think it can be very valuable for to share that experience with you guys, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. Very happy to answer your questions right now. So the story basically about Darewise, and maybe to start very quickly about myself, not to be too obsessed about this, but to give you a little bit of a context. Started my career very quickly as an investment banker. Something very I learned a lot, but I didn't really enjoy expanding in myself in this industry, and very quickly wanted to join the game industry. And I had an amazing experience working at Ubisoft, doing a bunch of different things. But my highest accomplishment was that I was one of the game directors working on Assassin's Creed, worked on Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Unity. Was very involved in the division on Ghost Recon Online and Settlers Online. So I always went back to online gaming, which has always been my passion since I was a kid. I only enjoyed playing with other people and playing connected and socially. In 2018, we opened a studio in Paris called Darewise, which is a team of 35 people now, mostly headquartered in Paris, but also working with a bunch of remote people now. Since the pandemic, we've completely revisited our way of running operation. And the first game we're developing is called Life Beyond, and it's in Life Beyond you join a team of over-equipped and underprepared space pioneers coming to heal a beautiful planet full of opportunities and resources. And it's interesting because when I started looking back and thinking about what Darewise is, it's a team of over-prepared but under-equipped developers, really aiming at delivering that very ambitious, very massive project. And I say "are," I should have said "were," because you thankfully we raised some money from very prestigious investors, and so we're not necessarily in this position anymore. But back then, that was truly what we were. Very experienced developers coming from some of the most famous studios, working on some of the biggest projects and biggest games in the industry, but still a very limited team, very limited resources. And so we had to deal with that very kind of balance DNA that we had. So we the whole thing was that when you come from these really big companies, you usually know you can accomplish amazing things, and you also want to push sometimes even further. And that was really our case. We really wanted to start building this next generation MMO, which started to mean a lot of different things for us at the time. And we absolutely wanted to self-publish it. And that was really this combination of things that when we started going out there and talking to people, people were really like, I'm not so sure about it. You know, this is you guys are a small team, a new team, sounds like an impossible challenge to overcome. So the first thing is, why did we want to self-publish? Because we could also have just gone for finding a publisher. But the truth is that the type of approach that we wanted to have was very new and probably too risky for publishers who are great partners in a lot of cases, but usually like to work on existing business cases, things that they can replicate, reproduce, or things that they can also forecast in a safer way. So with our approach, it was to bring huge scale in the world, a different type of gameplay. There was no really existing success stories or similar product even to be able to relate with. So it was very complicated to interact, to find a publishing partner that would be happy in this kind of a project. The second reason is, coming from this AAA background where you work in the shadow for so many years before you finally get to share what you've been producing with your blood and sweat, we definitely wanted to do something much more connected to our community, to the community that we would be building, and getting a lot of feedback along the development process, along the development cycle, to make sure we're going in the right direction. And publishers were not super excited about that idea. They wanted to be in control of the message. So then we went to see venture capitalists, and here the welcome was very different. It was like really looking at us like, you guys are dinosaurs in the industry. So these $50-100 million budget games with 500 to 1,000 people, and now you're telling us about, you don't come from this, you don't come from Zynga, you come from this past generation of game development and operation. So, we were like, okay, tough, but we need to prove these people wrong, and we need to convince them. And our interpretation of what they were saying was basically, you guys don't have the experience and nor the expertise to build and run a service. And for what it meant for us was your ability to grow communities, your mindset to be able to iterate fast, and knowing how to leverage data along this process. So once we experienced that, we had been in development for only like 2 or 3 months, and we said, okay, we have to release something, whatever it is, but something so that we can start building this thing, whole service, iterating with players, data, having this iteration process. And so we said, okay, let's give us 4 months. We're gonna rush from now to May 19th, which was the date when we released our first version, which was really like a backbone of something. And let's do it. So we can start testing with real players, and we can showcase this ability to run a live service. So when you look at, game companies are not very famous for being fast and extremely efficient. At least AAA teams, they're famous to deliver high quality, but not in the most efficient way. So we looked at other industries, and obviously we thought about tech startups, and software as a service companies, where they have this combination of design thinking, where they are constantly testing, they have this iteration process for along all the cycles, including the development. So we said, okay, let's look at that. These guys, we need to learn from them. And after all, we're trying to build a game as a service. So it sounds like it makes sense to do that. So this is how we decided to start working. We said, okay, we're gonna think of 3 steps. To be honest, back then we were more thinking about the first one. Let's rush to the minimum viable product. But very quickly you realize that you're gonna have a set of features, but it's not necessarily going to deliver, to convey completely the experience that you're trying to build. So MVP is important, but you need then to go quickly to what we like to embrace as a concept, then, which is the minimum lovable product, where this time you have a limited set of features, but they're really high quality, very pleasant, very enjoyable, and it truly showcase what you're actually have in mind as a final product, if there is any final product. And then from there, we scale the game, we scale the service, and we can build these things step by step. And so we decided to embrace a very unique development philosophy for that, which we like to call open development, and we've published a few stuff about it, which is really this idea of opening your kitchen. If you guys went to an open kitchen restaurant where you see people working, and you can truly see the whole process. So that really what it started to mean for us. At Darewise, we define the open development as the fact that we don't we don't really work with milestones. We work in continuous delivery, and we have access to the players to build, development build on a very frequent basis. Right now, we do this every week, once a week, 5 p.m. CET on our Discord server. People can come and play with us. We do a bunch of play tests along the week, but we also do one weekly play test with the whole company and the community. And of course, we're rolling with who is attending, but we do that every single week. The second very important thing is that there is no secret. You know, you're not afraid to share what's behind the door. You know, you can talk about your technology, you can talk about your processes, you can talk about your failures and your weaknesses and your insecurities. It's fine. But we feel very comfortable sharing absolutely everything, including things that are absolutely in progress, barely in design, and not just waiting to be completely accomplished or polished to be able to share. The third very important point for us, it was this idea that there's no promise, and that's how we've been talking to our community. We're not making any hard promise at this point, and things that are in the game should never be taken for granted. We can bring new stuff, change new stuff, remove some things because we realize that they're breaking the experience, or while they're making it enjoyable for some, they're hurting the experience of other players. And the last point is obviously that if you do that, you have access to so much data, so much qualitative feedback from the player, or this potential to get this feedback, that it's kind of a missed opportunity if you're doing this without building a strong analytic capacity, not just quantitative, but also qualitative. So being able to do user research and playtest. So once you said, okay, we want to build this thing, we want to build this, we have 4 months. Our process was like, okay, let's assess our team. What is that we are good at? What is that we're absolutely incapable of, or we have zero expertise right now? And the truth was, we had a very, very strong gameplay programming team, tech team, very, very experienced, and obviously contributed a lot to the success of that experience so far. But we had very little expertise on the backend side, very limited art capacity at the time. So we had to start thinking outside of the box and being, okay, how do we fix this puzzle with these missing pieces? So we started researching solutions and talking to, and this is what I think people should have in mind today, is how this breadth of services, breadth of partners that you can have today in the industry. It's insane. Developing technology, and that's how always been our philosophy at Darewise, should only happen when it's necessary. We should never build technology for the sake of it, because we have so much available off the shelf. So we started building partnerships and really great relationships with these teams. Obviously, we were using Unreal, so we started collaborating even more with Epic Games and getting access to their team, and you're getting them also excited about the project, so they also would allocate more resource to support us. We even got awarded with an Epic Mega Grant, so it really helped us. On the game server tech side, we started working with Improbable and became very early beta testers of Spatial OS, but also big contributors then on the service, and we got this benefit of being there early to also provide a lot of feedback as they were developing it. And we started kind of doing a bit of cherry picking of services and working with PlayFab on a bunch of stuff, working with Xsola, which has been a fantastic partner on the authentication, but also helping us to have a launcher so we could deliver the client to the players, helping us building a website so we could have the whole flow running. But we also obviously started building our own stuff that we're now hosting on Google Cloud Platform, but we did also build a bunch of our microservices that we need. So as you can see, it's really this mixture of a bunch of services that are available or the ones that you have to build. But we really started to fill in the blanks like that. When we look at this at this strategy for us, it was very obviously cost efficient because we didn't need to invest and spend a lot of money on developing upfront technology. It was very scalable because then you have a service behind that is already built for this purpose. You know, you're using PlayFab or some of the pieces provided by Google or Xsolar. This is amazing. These services can totally scale with you. They're available. Now the problem is that they can become very expensive when you start to scale very, very high, because then obviously this is also the purpose of their whole giving you access for free at the beginning, is that obviously at some point they need to make money, and that's fair. But it means that at some point you need to build that expertise because you need to start rebalancing and how you're using them and when not to use them. And you have a lot of customization limits, which becomes a problem. Not at the beginning, but as you start developing your game and bringing more flesh and muscle in it, you start wanting some very unique use cases that those services cannot provide because they're unique to your flow, to your architecture, to your experience. So this is when you start being in the need. And today, for instance, we'll have a whole backend team with very experienced people, and we're at a different stage of development. But it really helped us kickstarting back. Two things that I think are the best advices that I would provide in this setup is, as you do this thing and it starts to kick in, the process is starting to really work, then you want to have, there are a few pitfalls to avoid. The first one, and we didn't do that very well, was to have this right balance between art, design, and tech people. The problem is we had always an unbalanced team. We had a lot of tech people, very little to design, and a lot of art, then a lot of design, then not enough art. And so if you don't keep that team pretty well balanced, you end up creating bottlenecks eventually. And these bottlenecks become very frustrating for the whole team. And it can also even push a few people of your team to leave, and that creates like a very vicious circle. So being very careful and conscious of this, I think, is a really important thing. The second thing, and we took a bit long to get there, but we did it rather early anyway, was to invest in QA. QA is very important because the point of these fast iterations is that you're trying to develop fast, and so you need to make sure that the time of your doers is really, really well used. Your programmers, they need to write code, they need to architecture, they need to write code. If they start making QA of their own code, first, sometimes they don't know how to do it properly, but most of the time they're just doing something that someone else who's good at, and to be honest, who's going to be cheaper, can be doing. Obviously, a QA agent is cheaper than a C++ engineer, right? So that was really one of our best decisions. We worked with an outsourcing QA company based in Romania, and they really helped us being successful in this process. And that is something that I think we did too late, and that a bunch of stuff, when I talked to the studios, they always seem to kind of wanting to be handling all this internally. They feel like having a QA team, an external QA team, sounds like something that only a big studio can afford. And I think it's a mistake, because you're actually this is one of the best spent money that I think we did, and that really helped us. That's how we managed to go this fast, and they were absolutely part of this process to in 4 months get to this to this level with a service that was stable. We had no client crash at all, like zero crash. We had bugs obviously, but we had no crashes. And that really, really helped us to get there. So that's what I wanted to share with you, which is really if I had to kind of summarize, I'd say that really all of this is really possible, but obviously no one should be too naive. You can't do that when you have when you have the right expertise. You still need to have the right team, but it's possible, and you don't need to start building a massive team to get the ball rolling. You can kick it started with so many partners that are available right now and that are so interested in working with indies and kind of paying forward, to eventually get back from this your success and working closely with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this lecture. I think it was very helpful and useful for indie devs and small studios, and maybe for someone who want to start their own business. So we have some questions, and we have very little time for it. So first question: how do you understand that your experience presented in the game is necessary for the players?
That the experience is what for the player? Sorry.
The experience presented in the game is necessary for the players.
Is necessary.
Necessary, yeah. Maybe Valeria, who asked this question, used very harsh words, but
I mean, you mean necessary? Like it's the right fit, I guess, because obviously nothing.
Yes. I think it's like that. Yeah, the right fit.
Totally. Well, this is the whole point. I think the mistake that a lot of us make, and this is what we were doing as well, is to say, okay, I have this vision in mind, and I'm going to start testing, and we're going to start playing. We're going to get people to play, and we're going to start looking at people who drop, and we're going to try to fix this thing. And that was our biggest mistake, because at this point, and I think this is the beauty of game as a service. It's not like shipping a game and in a fire and forget mode where you ship the game and then you move on to something else. With a game as a service, you can build your audience over time, and so you don't need to have 5 million players day one. All you need is 2,000, 5,000, because once you start finding 5,000 people without going massively out there, it means you can probably find another 100,000 exactly like them. So instead of really trying to find this kind of a fit, like wide fit, what we would do is to find the ones who like the game as it is today, and then work on qualitative analysis with them. To be very clear, we do survey. We survey them. We do interview with them, trying to understand, okay, who are you? Why do you like the game right now? And the last question that I think is very important is, where can we find more people like you? Like really trying to understand, where are you guys? We found 5,000 of you. If now we understand who you are, we can probably bring another 100,000 that are exactly like you. And then as you get there, you're already pretty successful. Then you can start expanding and trying to understand why people were leaving your game and trying to address these points with and together. So I really would go again, I would argue against this kind of iteration through always try to find this kind of retention curve based design where you're like, oh my God, I have a D1 at 30% instead of having a D1 at 60%. I say, I don't care. I care about these 30%. These guys, I want to understand where they're here. I just want to find more of them. And once I have completely used this pool of players, then I can start understanding why it's going at 30%. But if I'm at 30% with 100,000 people, who these ones are going to stick very, and the curve completely flattens for them, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, that's a very cool approach. One more question. Ivan is asking, how do you gather the initial players base who watch the development process and provide feedback?
How do we gather the data?
How do you gather the initial player base? I mean, the first players.
How do we bring them? How did we bring them? Okay, so what is amazing is that the players are out there are just craving for they're craving for new content. they're craving for new experiences, and they're always super interested to be kind of part in the process, or to be able to look what's happening behind the curtain. So we didn't have to do much, you know. We went on Reddit, started posting a little bit about the game. So finding the right communities. Everybody thinks about the mainstream media, but you have also a bunch of smaller websites. They are much more focused. I'm thinking of like, I mean, smaller. They're not necessarily that small anymore, but think of like, MMORPG's website or massively OP website. These websites who have their very, very dedicated community. Way more than in the GameSpot or IGN. They're obviously extremely important when you need to launch bigger, but once you are at this first stage. And these websites are always super interested to cover your stories and to talk about them. And with this, extremely rapidly, we started having like 10 or 11,000. I remember, I think it took us like 2 or 3 weeks to have like 11,000 people signing up on our website to start joining the community, you know. And very quickly we built a 4,000 people Discord.
Yeah, that's very cool. So every time it's true. You don't have to. If you want someone to listen to you, you have to say something.
Yeah, and that's another. Maybe it's a last advice that I can give you here. Don't waste time over polishing your content. Something that I love to tell the team is fast, bad, wrong. You know, like this is how I want them to think. Like, it's, you know, done is better than perfect, and
yes.
just that's what matters. Just push it, and we have some stuff like. There's also something that is interesting is that at the time when it starts to pick up, people are going back to the previous content you created. And so when people start having interest in what you're doing, they will go back to all of this content that you already produced, that you didn't, and that you with very limited production value, but it's here, and at this point they're just asking for more, and instead of having to wait for the new stuff to come, they can already watch all of these things or read all of these things that you have. So there is no necessity at this point to over polish, over invest. And anyway, you cannot, you know, you don't have the marketing expert in-house, you don't have the budget, you don't have the graphic design to do that, but you should not prevent yourself from doing it because of that. At this point, it doesn't matter. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, Darewise today is a 40-people team. We have a graphic designer, we have a marketing director, we have a UA specialist, but we didn't need that to begin with.
Yes, that's true. Okay,